Hello, and welcome to Claire's World. I am Claire, and today I will be sharing with you more of the information I've received from the 25th dimension during my last BQH session. BQH stands for Beyond Quantum Healing, and my practitioner in this case was Lorrayne, who's also a good friend, and she was asking me questions I'd prepared in advance of the session. She normally says that when the question comes from someone else, from one of you guys, or if she has a question of her own. And when I refer to me, I'm talking about myself under hypnosis, which means that the answer is coming from the 25th. So without further ado, let's jump in. Lorrayne, are the 12,000 in the 3 waves of volunteers that Delores Cannon referred to in her book one and the same? And so I'm assuming most of you know who Delores Cannon is, but just in case, she is the mother of, I don't know if you call her the inventor of the qhht hypnosis method, which stands for quantum healing hypnosis technique. And she is the one that basically has revolutionized the way that we think about hypnosis in terms of you can actually connect to your higher self. And you'll see that the 25th refers to that. And so she wrote the book called The 3 Waves of Volunteers, where basically she is talking with people under hypnosis who remember having come here for a purpose. All right, so this is me, which means this is the 25th answering this question. If the 3 waves of volunteers that she is referring to, the same as the 12,000 that the 25th talks about, the 12,000 being the what most people know as the 144,000, which means the light workers that have worked on the takedown of this planet. Me. Some of them were, but no, not strictly, not necessarily. She was speaking with people who remembered coming here knowing that something would happen. And they also remembered their role in things, because we've already explained we all have a role. And so some of them, yes, they were some of the 12,000. But many of the 12,000 have been here for a very long time. And so no, they didn't just start coming when she said they were coming, which was in the 70s. So yes and no. She was talking, she was discovering the fact that some people were aware and conscious or became conscious during these sessions of having come here with a purpose. And again, their purpose, really our ultimate purpose is always just to have fun. That's why we come here. But at the same time, some of these people she spoke to, that's why she called them volunteers. We're all volunteers. The 25th was laughing. In essence, cannot be forced to do anything. But some of these essences she spoke to, they remembered that they had come here because they wanted to be part of something. And truly, that's why we're all here, because we have been wanting to be part of this takedown. I mean, this is history in the making, really, if you want to think of it in terms of time. Lorrayne, thank you. Did the 12,000 start coming here 300 years ago when you said we decided to do the takedown, or have been reincarnating within the game for 300 years? And what have they been doing? Me. So no, there have been some of the 12,000 on this planet since the beginning. Claire has been here from the beginning, for example, because this is a planet like any other. And the 12,000 are essences like any other. They choose what experience they want to have, and they will go to whatever planet fits their needs, or they will incarnate any way they want to. And so Claire was just interested in being here, but she's not the only one. There were other essences who were part of the 12,000 who have been here from the beginning. Again, it's not such a long experience. It's only been 500 years. But yes, when the takedown was called, when the alarm was given by the watchers, all of the 12,000 were not here, which was the majority of them, and started making their way here. Not all of them have been here for 300 years. We already explained that if one of the 12,000 had an experience that they wanted to complete somewhere else, they would have not cut their experience short to come here. Even though this was an emergency, again, an emergency situation. It's not like a fire where every second counts from a 3D perspective. So the essences felt that some of them could take their time before incarnating here. Not only, we already explained that there's really no time and space, and therefore you don't have to be incarnated in a certain place to do your duty. So the 12,000 were able to help even before incarnating here. Now, why have they all incarnated here eventually? Because we've also explained that one of the easiest ways for and the most obvious way for the 12,000 to redress something or to stabilize something is to actually be present and focus in that reality. Because again, just by being in that reality, excuse me, I was grabbing a pen to make a note here, to redress something or to stabilize something is to actually be present and focus in that reality. Because again, just by being in that reality, you're rebalancing things. But we also said in this case, in this particular case, we were not able to achieve our goal. And so that has not been sufficient. But again, not because some of them were not here immediately. It doesn't work like this. There are many steps before they were taken where, again, you don't even need all the 12,000 to be here. For example, one of the first things the 12,000 do, we've described this previously, is to basically have a talk and an understanding with communication and messaging with the civilization, asking, hey, this is what's happening, and we need support to do these things. And we need to address these issues before we have a real problem. And we weren't heeded. So you don't need the entire group of 12,000 here for that. So again, it's not quite just like having a fire when you need to act swiftly and you cannot delay. You drop everything, you run and put out the fire. Well, we're not trying to say this was not an emergency. We have done things like we have told people, hey, there is a fire, or we need to do these things to contain it or whatever it is. And again, that didn't work. So yeah, in physical terms, not everyone was here on the spot when the takedown was decided. But once it was decided, everybody, once the alarm was sounded, everybody was here. Everybody came here, as soon as they had a chance to. Lorrayne, thank you. Why did Delores Cannon not know about all the details we are privy to now? Was it too early for her to tap into this information? Yes, we were just not ready for this information. People like Delores Cannon have done the groundwork. They've laid down the premise. Basically, they've made us all more comfortable with the idea that you could consciously access information from your higher self. So she's done incredible work in that sense. But it wasn't our role to bring in all the information we're bringing in now. And the reason we are able to bring it in now is because of people like her who have introduced this idea. And so people like Clea now are comfortable saying, yeah, of course, if I'm under hypnosis, I'm going to connect. All of a sudden, you're dropping that resistance because this is all it is. We're all connected. We said this a million times. The problem is that at a 3D level and at a conscious level, we don't want to know that we are connected. But all of a sudden now, it is an accepted fact that you can connect to your higher self. So even people who really think of themselves as being very 3D, they're totally fine going to get a hypnosis session and speaking with, they might call it their subconscious, whatever they call it. They're still connected to the same thing. Now, we've also said that messages get filtered because your higher self will try to give you as much as it can, but it also doesn't want you to modify your experience. In other words, the higher self will only push what you agreed to as yourself. Meaning that if your experience needs to be that of a being very 3D and maybe just getting a message here and there so you can calibrate your own life and be happier or resolve a long-standing issue, great, that's all you will get. So that's what we talk about being filtered. And even your higher self will filter information if you're not meant to know. Your higher self is the one that's directing your entire life at the end of the day. And while we do have this disconnect oftentimes, we experience it as a disconnect. We think of ourselves as being separate from our higher self. Of course, there's no such thing. Then we feel like as if we're playing this game where the higher self is trying to give us information, but we're resisting it. Clea has the same experience. She's resisted a lot of information over time. We all do this. We don't want to know certain things. That's why we talk about, breakthroughs. And eventually we do get stuff. Some people, we said, they have to have an NDE, a near-death experience, to finally allow themselves to consciously know certain things. But again, we're referring to this because many people believe that what you get, I got a phone call, so I hung up, but I didn't want to interrupt this video. So many people believe that what you get from these sessions is always the ultimate truth. But there are several factors at play here. Again, one, your higher self will not give you more than you can handle or more than you've allowed yourself, than you have agreed to experience in this lifetime. But again, we are referring to this because many people believe that what you get from these sessions is always the ultimate truth. But there are several factors at play here. Again, one, your higher self will not give you more than you can handle or more than you've allowed yourself, that you have agreed to experience in this lifetime, because the higher self already knows everything. All it's interested in is what kind of experience are we going to have in this lifetime? That's it. The higher self does not need to experience everything all at once. Every experience has equal value. It's just an experience. So if a person wants to be completely 3D, but all of a sudden their cousin tells them, hey, I know you haven't gotten over your divorce. Why don't you go do a session? Because I've heard this guy's great with that. It really makes you feel a lot better. And the person goes and has it, and they're trying to resolve this particular issue. The higher self will come in and help with that. And that's it. That's the end of the session. They're not really open to anything else. Even if the higher self wanted to give some more information that was more of an ethereal, spiritual nature, they would not want to access it, or they would probably think, oh, I just made that up. Whatever it is, we find ways, we've discussed this before, we find ways of ignoring everything that does not match the experience we want to have. This is true in terms of what we see of our reality. We overlook glitches all the time. And we are mentioning this because there is a question coming up about trees moving themselves. That's a major glitch in the matrix, and we're laughing. It's kind of neat to finally figure out that these things happen. These things have always happened. Nothing is fixed. Nothing is the way that we think it is. We just like to believe that. And so it's funny that now a lot of people who are more open to see certain things are finding out that, wow, the planet doesn't really work just one way, does it? There are things we thought were impossible. They're actually happening. And they were laughing again. This is true in every single facet of what we consider reality. But let's go back to the hypnosis session. So yes, Delores did a great job of opening people up to at least having this vehicle as a way to allow for more conscious connection. But it wasn't our job to actually bring information that was the ultimate truth or the kind of truths that we are giving you now. Because again, most of the people, including us, up until very recently, we were interested only in the matrix and in the game. And we did not want to know the things we are discovering now. We did not want to know that we're really creating this right now. As we speak, we're creating this reality. We create it all the time, and we do whatever we want. A lot of people want to believe that the outside reality, most people, the vast majority of people wants to believe it's the outside reality that dictates your life. Even the example we just talked about, the idea that, you turn left or you turn right, you can have two different experiences. Your experiences are always only decided by your higher self. There's one higher self, if you want to think of it that way. There's no one higher self, it's energy. But if you want to think of it that way, you have one higher self, it's always there, and it's always focused on what it wants to experience next. So it doesn't matter whether you turn left, you turn right, or you go backwards, it's all the same. It's just the next experience. So we hope we have answered your question. Thank you. I believe you have. Claire would like to know why so many of us, me included, are now wanting to be around humans, seeing friends, engaging with other people. Me. Because one, a lot of our friends are gone. And what we don't want to tell ourselves at a conscious level, we know. So even people that we love, all of a sudden, we might have no desire to see them. Nothing has changed on the surface, nothing wrong, except that you know. And secondly, also because our attention is not on that anymore. Our attention until very recently was simply on getting out of here. And now even with this new blip, and they were laughing, in the plan, our attention is like, oh, let's see what's happening. But again, we're not necessarily here saying this is where we're going to commune anymore. Again, a lot of people are not even here to commune with anymore. And so you're just going to naturally, as an essence, pull back and not be as social as you were before. And I don't know if you've noticed this. I know many of us have noticed it. I, for example, have always been very social, very interested in seeing friends and doing stuff. And even new people, I love doing stuff and talking with new people. And all of a sudden, I just feel like I'm not as outwardly motivated anymore. So I've noticed this and I wanted to ask this question. So hopefully this, if you're in the same situation, this kind of explains where you're coming from. Lorrayne. Makes perfect sense. Okay, you've told us that there is a non-random geographic distribution of people between the country and cities based on their choice, aliens, 3D, or New Earth. What about distribution within genders? Rhonda noticed that there are way more men than women at festivals this year. Is this due to different alignments between the genders, and so more women than men have been picked up by the aliens to date? So I want to thank Rhonda for this question. I did not realize that she is very keen. She's observing to see, what we can see in terms of 3D reality that confirms some of the stuff we've been told by 25th. And so she's done a good job of investigating the stuff. And she told me that this was weird. She basically has always been going to these music festivals. And this year, it's obvious that there is a complete disproportion between the number of men and the number of women, meaning there are very few women. So I thought this was interesting. So we have already discussed the fact, as you referred to in your question, that these distributions of essences have put themselves in situations that would make it easier for them to align with the choice that they've already made. So we have described this in terms of being in the country versus the city. Essences that were in the city knew that certain things would happen because we all know. Even though we act surprised at a conscious level when things happen, we all know exactly what's going on. Versus essences that have wanted to be more independent, self-sustaining, if you wish. And again, we're generalizing. There were absolutely 3D people who are living in the country. There are absolutely essences that are going with the aliens, or that have gone with the aliens, or that are going to New Earth. There are even some of the 12,000 that live in cities, okay? So we are generalizing here. But generally speaking, you as an essence, knowing what's coming, and we always knew what was coming, and put yourself in a situation that will more easily, again, align you with where you're going. We've also used the example of homeless people. While not all homeless people are or were 3D, the vast majority of them was. Why? Because you put yourself in a situation where you are reflected back to you, the experience you want to have. So you're actually manifesting that experience. But the way we look at it from here and now, you are looking at a reality around you that is telling you, yeah, everything is very real. This is it. This is how the world works, because this is the experience you want to have. And so in that sense, whatever will help you align with your choice is what's going to happen. So for example, we know this. Again, we're generalizing greatly here. But women in the society have more leeway to be spiritual. They have more leeway to be what you call woo-woo. And we're laughing here. There's less judgment put on women who are woo-woo as opposed to men. Men have more of as a societal expectation, and they're more compelled to use more logic, or what we think of as logic, and they were laughing. To be more structured, to have certain responsibilities that don't allow for a lot of distractions, this woo-woo stuff, et cetera, So by default, knowing that you're coming to a society like this, for example, in the United States, and of course, this is changing. There are many, many men, as we well know, who are not only spiritual, but also very awake. But you've even noticed that in the intel community, how many men, the few men that are in there, have called for their fellow men to wake up, because they see it, that it's the men who are mostly asleep. Again, this is being done intentionally. Again, it's not that the men who are less smart or less awake because they don't get it, and they were laughing. It's a choice. You're all aligning. You're always aligning yourself with your choice. And so what's happened is that a lot of essences, knowing all of this, when they have chosen the NPC or the situation, the country, whatever it is, to come into, they've decided they were going to incarnate as women, because this would allow them to be more open to the concept maybe of aliens, even though a lot of men are open to the concept of aliens. But maybe be more open to the fact that there is more out there even than aliens. Things are very spiritual. Maybe the witchy idea, whatever it is that takes you in the direction that you're going in. You know how this works. We've discussed this at length before in other sessions. And so what's being noticed, but this has been noticed even at a 4D level in the intel community, that it's mostly women that have responded and taken up the call, because we had set up as essences. Because as essences, it doesn't matter what you decide, whether to incarnate as a man or a woman. It's just a different experience. And so a lot of essences have incarnated as women because they're able to do this. We're even thinking of Clea. She doesn't even know if she had been a man, which she had given herself permission to be this quote unquote irresponsible. As in, all of a sudden, spending less time working so she could have more time to write the story of her life or to even do these sessions. These are all things that are possible because she's a woman. Even the fact that she doesn't feel as limited by certain expectations, or because she's a mother, so she's taking more time from work to be with her child, and all of a sudden, she has more time to think about other things as well. Do you see? We set ourselves up in a way that it makes sense, that allows us to get to where we want to get to. And because of this reason, yes, there is also a greater distribution of certain types of essences, or certain essences. There are no types of essences. Certain essences that want to have certain types of experience by gender. And there is also distribution by, which is the follow-up question, by tribe, for example. There is a question from Josie Adams coming up about, so what about indigenous people? Basically, are they all going with the aliens, considering that, at least in our conscious knowledge, they're all very awake compared to the average city dweller? They're much more spiritual. They have long traditions of being awake. And the answer is yes. Does it mean that each and every one of the indigenous people is going to have the exact same experience? They're all going to go with the aliens? They're all going to go to New Earth or whatever it is? Again, the essence is always free. But if we're generalizing and talking about the majority of a group, yes, in this case, the majority of indigenous people, why did they incarnate as indigenous people? It's because they wanted to align themselves with this being awake, really, with this being open to spiritual things, more traditional things, which means more natural things, Gaia. This has always been their experience. So of course, it would make sense that they wouldn't necessarily be interested in going to a 3D chamber. It just wouldn't make sense. Does that mean that there is no indigenous person who's gone to a 3D chamber? Of course not. There are indigenous people who have gone to 3D chambers. There are indigenous people that might actually have indigenous blood, but really, they very much wanted to be part of 3D. And so, of course, they can do that. There are no limitations to what an essence can experience. But we're generalizing again. We're talking about, big numbers of people here. So in general, yes, it would be very easy for you to incarnate in a certain group of people. And if that's already an accepted belief that there is spirit, for example, obviously that makes it easier for you to bypass the 3D and to be open to this. It's just like everything else. If you were born in a very religious family, it's so much easier to go along with it. But as we all know, there is always what we like to refer to on this planet as the black sheep. Because at the end of the day, if you have a different personality, you want to experience something else, you could be born in the most religious family in the world, and you're going to go off on your path, and you're going to believe in the aliens and whatever else, or you might become completely an atheist. We know this, okay? So again, we're talking in general numbers here. So yes, essences, to answer your question, basically, to summarize this answer, essences choose. And sometimes incarnating in a certain way or in a certain area, even by continent, for example, because we said continents have different histories they want to play out, different experiences they want to play out. Yes, absolutely, you can do that. That's a shortcut to you having certain experiences and therefore aligning with your choice. Lorrayne, thank you. There was one part of the question that did not get answered, and that is the question of, have more women been picked up at this point in time of the 80%? And I know that a certain percentage of those have already chosen to come back into their bodies. Of that 80%, have more women that have gone than men. So I think, the question is clear. Is it more women or men that have gone out of this 80%? Okay. I don't know why it came through a little bit garbled here, so I just want to make sure it's clear. Me, Yes, because again, more essences that incarnated as women wanted a certain experience. So more of them had gone with their body because again, they were going with the aliens as opposed to more men who were actually instead going to 3D chambers. So they've left their bodies behind. So yes. All right, well, thank you so much for watching and I hope you enjoyed it and I will see you in the next video. Take care, bye-bye.